This week's guest, Jody Gelb, has been a stage actor in New York and San Francisco for over 40 years, and recently wrote a poetic memoir about her life with her daughter Louisa called She May Be Lying Down, But She May Be Very Happy. I first met Jody over Zoom, and the story she told me was devastating, touching, and then heartwarming. This episode is different from most in that Jody is telling the story on behalf of someone else, her daughter Louisa. In 1994, Jody was living in New York with her husband and was pregnant with their first child, Louisa. The catastrophic events of Louisa's birth changed Jody's life. It was the plot twist that we talk about so often on the podcast. There's a wonderful poem by Emily Pearl Kingsley called Welcome to Holland. It's often given to new parents of children with special needs and describes the beauty that can be found even when reality ends up being completely different than what a new parent has planned or expected. Like planning a trip to Italy, but winding up in Holland. Jody was given this poem shortly after Louisa's birth, but recognized that the beginning of her journey with Louisa was less like landing in Holland and more like landing in a war-torn Afghanistan. She wrote, "Holland couldn't be this terrifying. This was a dystopia. Birth and near death. Baby rushed into territory of hospital with other doomed babies. Giant radioactive machines being wheeled around close to babies. Babies who were see-through and not quite finished, eyes taped shut, sporting hand-knit volunteer-donated wool caps to maintain their body heat. Incomprehensible language being spoken. No guidebooks for Afghanistan. War unending. You could die of exposure in the frozen mountains. A terrorist could blow you up. Only way in was by warplane or a crash landing." This week, Jody tells us about the crash landing, but also about leaving the wreckage and finding the gifts that Louisa's life had to offer. This is Dying to Tell You.
My name is Jody Gelb. When I was in one of my very dark, hopeless moods, I think I called this wonderful woman at New York Hospital. I said, "I'm very overwhelmed. I don't literally know how to function because something has happened to our baby on the day of her birth. We don't know where we are. I'm very upset." Next thing I know, I think she faxed this piece of paper to me. And it was called Welcome to Holland. And it's this wonderful metaphor, basically, I think, designed for parents that are getting some kind of really scary diagnosis for their child. I appreciated those words very much. And as things got scarier for us in terms of Louisa starting to have a new kind of brain seizure and not physically developing the way you're supposed to in terms of rolling, grasping an object, bringing your hands forward, all of those babbling things, all the things that weren't happening. And injections my husband had to give her for a month because of these things, a certain kind of seizure called infantile spasms. And if you go to a bookstore, which I did, and you start looking in the special needs section or the brain section, and you look up infantile spasms, and you think you're going to fall over because it is, I don't know the percentage, but mostly it's a catastrophic kind of a seizure that shows up when the baby's, when they're an infant. And it usually means terrible, terrible things neurologically for the child. So somewhere along in here, I remember having the thought, I love Welcome to Holland. Mm-hmm. It's great. But I thought, I need to write about this because Holland is so nice and calm, and all of the wonderful things we know about Holland, and where we were was so terrifying that I needed to make up another metaphor that would relate more to what I felt we were going through. That became my first, I guess, micro chapter of what, ended up being this tiny memoir that I worked on and off for many, many years.
And what is the metaphor? Where were you?
I think because when this was all going on, one of the most difficult, troubled places in the world at that time was Afghanistan. Our experience was so terrifying. I wanted to create something to describe a different place, a different metaphor. And so for me, it was like a crash landing, not in a beautiful, calm place like Holland, but a place that was very troubled and had been at war for many decades back then. And so that was my metaphor, Afghanistan.
Yeah, maybe would you just take us back to that day and what happened that was so traumatic, and we can kind of walk through it a little bit.
Mm-hmm. I had a wonderful 9-month pregnancy, and all of a sudden, one night, I started to get what I knew were the beginning labor pains. And we also knew we didn't have to rush to the hospital, so we spent the night in our apartment. And the contractions would come, but you knew it was early, so you were very excited. And in the morning, called the obstetrician to say that baby was probably going to come today. And it was a weekend. I think it was a Saturday. And so we actually went to his office in Manhattan, where I guess I was probably checked. And then he said, well, you're probably going to get, you don't want this to go on too long. So let's check you into the hospital. And got checked into the hospital. And like very soon after that, maybe that's when it was, you can't be in labor too long. You'll be too tired. So we're just going to break your water. And that's a thing that sometimes is done, maybe for good reasons, I'm sure. But it seemed like it was trying to rush the birth. So that was quite painful. The water is broken. And then what I had dreaded, because I had read about it, and I don't know how I resisted it, but you just don't feel like you can in certain situations. So then it was again, this, you've got to get this moving. So then they put the IV in, and they start giving you that drug called Pitocin, which works out for most people, but in about 3 minutes, the contractions were so excruciating. It was not tolerable. And I had always thought I would have, natural labor, like my mother had one natural labor with my younger sister, but it became like being killed. So I said, I need to get an epidural. The epidural doctor came in, I got the epidural. And then it's like, well, now you're just going to wait. So, they come in and out. And at one point they said, oh, well, baby's oxygen, it's just a little low. No, not a problem. So lie on your left side, because that's if you're having any oxygen, it's better to lie on your left side. Baby will get more oxygen. And you're just lying there and waiting. And then the next thing I knew, at some point, I remember the doctor coming in and saying very calmly, and I'm glad he said it calmly, baby's not happy where she is. We need to get her out right away. I was flipped onto my back. I was experiencing excruciating, I think it was called back labor, where the pressure is going through your back, and it's unbearable kind of a pain, and you're being told to push, but you can't push because it's like someone's killing you. So all you're doing is you're sort of pushing away because you can't, your body doesn't work anymore.
Well, you're also numb from the mid back down. Yeah.
You're partly numb, but you're also partly in excruciating pain. Right. And I didn't see what was going on. I think my husband said then there were forceps were taken and the baby was gotten out. During that time, the ICU for NICU was called. So then the emergency doctors at some point were in the room. Immediately, because she wasn't breathing, they had to intubate her. From the record that I have now seen, they intubated her down her esophagus first, out, and then back down the proper way. And then she was whisked away and taken to the NICU. And my husband and I were left alone in this hospital room. We didn't know what had happened. We didn't know, did she die? Is she going to die? Where are we? Because of the epidural, I think it was like 3 a.m. We were brought to the NICU to see her. She was, beautiful 7-pound, 11-ounce baby. And she was probably pumped full of drugs because her brain had been injured. We didn't know this then, but she was probably had seizures. And I saw her, and then I guess they said, well, now that we're going to put you on the floor to go to sleep. And I said, just please don't put me near any happy birthing mothers. I can't, be around those people. I can't be around people that are about to be happy. So I had maybe one night in the hospital, and, then we just were living the terrifying hospital life where we'd go over there every day, spend the day with her. I started pumping breast milk so that she wouldn't have to have formula. And she was fed through a little nasogastric tube, which went to her stomach. And I just would sit there in the hospital in a little chair and hold her for most of the day. And she was pretty drugged for many days because of seizures. So it was very peaceful. I could just hold her. And, but 12 days after her birth, they said, oh, now you can go home. The CAT scan didn't find anything. And they gave us no information, just like, bye-bye, bye. And I remember we walked out of the hospital with a baby carriage that someone had left us. Walked into Central Park on one of those incredibly beautiful mid-October days and felt like we were escaping the bowels of hell. It's strange to talk about it just because it was so terrifying. And eventually, the arc of the story was that eventually, little by little, I started to see what's going on. Oh no, she's not developing this way. This is not working. Well, but, maybe she'll have a limp, and then I would remember that little boy walking to school every morning, and he had a kind of cerebral palsy where his legs were affected, his arms were kind of affected, but he could walk to school. So, you start making deals in your head. And I thought, that's okay, I can deal with that. She'll have a limp. And then things aren't going well. And then you're thinking, well, okay, but of course she'll talk. You don't even consider speech. So little by little, you get to these points where you go, oh, okay, so she'll be in a wheelchair at some point. You think that's when you're really far along with the hope thing. And eventually you get to this incredible place because Louisa was very happy and understood us and could do a yes and a no that were very clear. And because of the time passing and all the things that I was looking into, you finally got to this place of, she's happy. We're going to be okay. We're going to figure this out.
Right.
We're going to find her the right doctors. Can she see? Is she blind? Well, we'll take her to the doctor that checks her eyes. No, she can see. It was a long process that first year. And at a certain point, you get to, or I got to, okay, we have support with a very special school that our friend started. We had, my family was very, very caring and loving, and we lived there for 9 months. So little by little, you get to a point where you are finally to the acceptance that, oh, I see what happened.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This was catastrophic. She was damaged so severely, and as my husband said, she may be lying down, but she may be very happy.
Right.
And
Right.
that's what it was. She was happy. She loved life. And you get to that place. And then a little bit later, you get to another place of she's very vulnerable. And she did get a pneumonia when she was 2. Oh, you don't pay that much attention to your little child getting pneumonia, but these things build up to where you realize she's very fragile, and we have to make sure she sees this doctor, that doctor, checking the lungs, all of that. But meanwhile, we were lucky. We would find some mother who'd say, oh, I know this program for kids with disabilities. The mom's running it in her living room. And I just magically meet people who would then lead you to the next amazing thing,
Mm-hmm.
where people had brought special teachers over from the country of Hungary because they had invented this amazing way to work with kids with these kinds of disabilities during the 1940s. So we kept getting magically led and eventually ended up at this incredible school out here that Neil Young's wife, Peggy Young, had started probably in the late 80s. And I accidentally found out about that because the New York Times wrote a review of the benefit they do every year, or they did every year. So there I am down at United Cerebral Palsy, dropping Louisa off for her first preschool and eating, toasted bagels across the street. And somebody left a little piece of the New York Times on a table. And I thought, oh, well, let me see what's in here. Next thing I know, I'm reading about the bridge school. And later that afternoon, I'm talking to the secretary from the bridge school on the phone. And that was the beginning of, sending her reports in. And then a spot opened up a few years later when she was the right age. And we were very, very lucky that we could make that move, get out of, leave New York and move here. And the Board of Education agreed with us. That's the perfect placement for Louisa. So we had a lot of, I think some people use the word, is it grace? Mm. We had a lot of grace through these years.
Yeah.
That was pretty extraordinary.
I want to go back to your crash landing there in the hospital and the lack of information that you had. The way that I read it in your book, it was little bits of incremental acceptance. And some of it was because there was just no information. And some of it was because you knew within yourself, I can't hear the bad things.
Right.
There's a lot of pressure from people around and probably medical professionals too, to just get on board, be okay with what's happened, accept it. And I'm wondering, how did you have the agency within yourself to say, I can't have that bad news right now. I can't know that right now. How did you have that within yourself to kind of draw that line and, that boundary?
I think it was just gut instinct of where I was. I just couldn't deal with. I couldn't hear the bad news. I just needed to live in the hope for whatever period I needed to live in that hope. And not only me telling doctors, but we were lucky because I had stories from parents who said they had that horrible thing happen where the doctor, out of the blue, says, well, you should really consider putting your child in an institute, whatever they called it, placing your child somewhere. Or saying some casual weird thing like, well, don't get them piano lessons or something that would devastated one of the parents. And I remember the wife telling me, oh yeah, she said, my husband, he never got over that. I don't think it was, I had been warned. It was just, I knew I couldn't deal with anything more than we had already dealt with, which was, it looked really bad, but I needed to keep hoping that things would get better and she would be able to do things physically, that she was not going to be disabled. And then even when I was sort of saying, well, maybe she'll have a limp, then, little by little, you start to say, well, no, and remember, I'd say, oh my God, Daniel Day-Lewis. Do you remember Daniel Day-Lewis and My Left Foot? He played this, it was a real story. He severely disabled with cerebral palsy, but his left foot worked and he had intelligence. And so I'd conjure these things and go, oh, okay. I mean, and then I had this fantasy of, I wish I could bump into Daniel Day-Lewis and say, do you know how you helped? Not just me, but I'm sure other people. Because of that movie and telling that story, there are parents out there probably who thought, okay, I can do this. So that's what would happen. Little by little, I'd say, okay, I can do. But yeah, there were those doctor's appointments where I was so lucky because I'd say to the neurologist, what what is in this MRI? But I think at a certain point I said one question.
Can she be okay?
Can she still be okay?
Yeah.
And I'm so lucky because that neurologist had that kind of awareness to interpret what I said, which was, don't freak this woman out. Because if you start talking about the basal ganglia that were damaged and really what that means, she's not ready to hear it. And I think some doctors are definitely trained that way. More now, I mean, probably a lot of them are trained that way now. So I was just, seat of my pants instinct of, I can't tolerate this. So help me out here without saying that. They heard it and they knew.
Either a wonderful mistake by him or wonderful insight by him.
Yeah.
But can she still be okay? I actually wrote that down as I was reading because that's such a broad question open for interpretation. And he could have easily said, well, what do you mean by that? What do you mean okay? And let's get into that. Or he could say, in his mind, what does okay mean? Okay means that she can live a life that's going to be just fine with her parents. And she can be okay. Right? And I don't know. It's hard for me to put into words what I'm thinking or what I'm feeling about that, because it's a question that I think probably if you had to answer what does okay mean would have evolved over that first year or 2 years or whatever it was that it took you to kind of come to acceptance of what really her life was going to look like. But the things that you were hoping for, the little pieces of hope, at first it was, other families that said, oh, this terrible thing happened to my child, but look, they're fine now, nothing, no deficits. And you're hoping for that, but then, you notice some deficits and you think, well, maybe a limp, right. Or maybe a wheelchair, but those little pieces of hope that you needed in order to make it through that particular moment, even though the hope didn't come true, the hope was what got you through that particular moment.
Until I could accept
the next thing.
All of this. and then realize she's happy. She's after she went through the horrible month-long injections to stop the infantile spasms, and for some reason it worked. They never know why it works. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes the child never stops having seizures for the rest of their life. I don't know why Louisa, I think it was because her seizures were from the brain damage, and then that calmed down. I don't know. But so she was stable in that way. And then she started smiling again after a month of these treatments, which made her scream and cry for hours at a time because it's a corticosteroid. So it ramps the baby up. Right. The baby is screaming and yelling for hours at a time. At the hospital, they say, she might be a little irritable. It was it was really painful. And then because it's that kind of treatment, her face got, swollen with steroids. We had to test all her fluids to make sure she was going to be. And she came out of it, and all of a sudden she's smiling. And the neurologist, let's say the fourth neurologist who put her on that treatment, one of the checkups, he said, she has great social skills. That, that meant she was connected to people. That meant she was right there. So, like from there on, you just start you see all of the good things, which are, she's happy. Mm-hmm. She's not screaming all the time. And more good things presented themselves.
If you had known what life would look like down the road, if you had known that on the day of, I can imagine it would have been completely overwhelming. I can imagine you would have thought, there's no way I can do this. I can't do. I'm not
one of the strong people.
Right.
That's why I thought it couldn't happen to me, because I had this magical thinking. It doesn't happen to people like you, Jody. You're too sensitive. You're too emotional. You're not a strong person. Don't worry. It's not going to happen because you can't take it.
But apparently that's not how it works, right?
Yeah.
You become strong because it does happen to you. Yeah. Would you go to the time that your husband said she may be lying down? When you told the story before, it was this kind of moment where you were coming to a realization that she is going to spend most of her life lying down.
Yeah.
And it seemed like it was on the verge of being devastating until he said what he said.
Yeah. I mean, that's when we were still living at my parents' that first 9 months. And she would have physical therapy in the apartment. It was an amazing program through New York State. So the therapist would come over and she'd have her on the bed, and it was a pretty high double bed, and she'd move her. And once in a while she'd mention the word tone, like as in muscle tone. I didn't know what it meant, but it sounded, I don't know. I didn't want to hear the word tone because it seemed like this is something I don't want to know about, which it turns out you don't want to know that your child has abnormal muscle tone. So anyway, I think it was probably after a session with her, and Louisa's lying on the bed, and, I just got into that very nervous, I can't deal with it head. And I was there with my husband, and I said, in a not hysterical voice, but there was a not a pleasant edge of saying, is she always going to be lying down? Like, oh my God. And he just very calmly said, in his beautiful Polish accent, she may be lying down, but she may be very happy. I mean, and it was such a powerful moment for me.
Mm.
He didn't remember saying it when I asked him years later.
Yeah.
But he has so much wisdom in many situations, and a kind of a different, calmer personality mostly. And that kind of, it's okay. She could be very happy. That kind of energy is so soothing and healing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was for me another one of those little miracles.
Magic for sure. And that's how it turned out. Yeah. She was very happy.
Yep. That's how it turned out. She was very happy. There were certain people she loved. She had a sense of humor. She had a dark sense of humor sometimes. It was, a little odd in terms of, some terrible thing had happened. And she would, laugh about it, where with a typically developing kid, you would, scold them, or not scold them, but try to explain why that's not funny. But, Louisa's world was different. But she, as my husband also said way back then, he said, to me, she is completely normal.
Mm.
And that's what it was for us in many, many ways, because we could ask her questions. Do you want this? Do you want that? Do you want to watch this movie? Do you want to watch that movie? This movie? Aye. And she'd turn her head to the side and go, aye. That was a yes.
Mm-hmm.
She knew her alphabet because of school and because of Sesame Street, and you could then go through the alphabet. Is it A, B? And you'd get to a letter, and she'd stop you with the I.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'd figure out, she wants us to tell this story, or she wants us to put this music on, or play this movie. And, she was an amazing child.
Yeah. To me, she's completely normal. It's a really beautiful thing to say, and it's so in so many ways it's so true, because she is normal for her, and that's just who she is. And we make all sorts of accommodations for everyone in a lot of ways. She just needed different kinds of accommodations than everybody else. And I think it's great perspective. And again, perspective that you can only come to when you can come to it.
But, at a certain point, Louisa's health went off the rails, and she had been pretty healthy through most of her life. And then what happens a lot of times is you become medically fragile, and stuff starts happening because of your muscle tone everything's out of whack. Right. So your swallowing is not strong. If you have a weak swallow, you're at risk for aspirating either saliva, food, whatever, and then you can have these terrible aspiration pneumonias. So we had seen that happen with a lot of her classmates. We had seen a bunch of children die very suddenly. So I knew where we were, which was keeping her healthy. But you also knew, now we're on a downslide here. Mm-hmm. It's not going to go well. And I know, I see where we're going. They luckily don't tell you that earlier. Another thing, it was nice not to be told. But if you're paying attention, you see this is what's happening. And a lot of these kids will die young or in their early 20s. So we did everything we could. We had her, she spent a lot of time at the Children's Hospital down at Stanford in Palo Alto, which was an amazing, amazing place. And that's when I was totally in reality, and I could say to a doctor, where are we? Mm-hmm. Tell me where we are. Are we, can you tell me like what's going on now? It means what? She's going to be here for another year. Where are we? And doctors could be, because they knew what I wanted to hear. And they were very honest with me. And they would say, well, she's going each plateau, you go down, you don't go back up. So this is the way it's going. And, you just did the best you could. You felt that you were getting great medical care there. And, I just would stay up late at night and do a lot of research about, death and dying and life expectancy. And yeah. Then she died when she was 16 and a half. And there you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very similar to that kind of trajectory, that plateau stair step trajectory is very similar to older people who have lung disease or things like that, where emphysema, COPD, you'll have an exacerbation. It requires hospitalization. They get you through it. You kind of come back up a little bit. You ride along, another exacerbation. And for you, it's just these aspiration pneumonias. Can you tell me a little bit about how you navigated the hospitalizations and how you balanced the prolonging of Louisa's life with the quality of her life? And was there a time when it became clear that she wasn't going to make it through this pneumonia or this particular thing?
That never happened, where she was in the hospital and it was getting worse and worse and worse, and you thought, oh, this is going to be it. I mean, there were moments when catastrophes happened in the hospital. Mm-hmm. Everybody rushes in, they do a code blue or they do a rapid response, and they get her through it. And then more information. Oh, okay, now we see really what's going on. She needs to get a trach, which was a very hard thing to get your head around. But I called the one mom I knew whose daughter had a trach, and she talked me through that. And then you realize at a certain point, it's not a choice anymore. You have to do this tomorrow, because she could have died at various times, and we didn't know that that's how bad it was. But her little trachea would just sometimes collapse. Yeah. So she got the trach, and on we go. We have to learn about how to deal with that. And she, had a lot of continuing illnesses, but you're never thinking, I mean, you know where it's going, but it's not like, oh, now we're going to stop treatment. It's not like when there's an overwhelming cancer, it's, in my mind, is what it's always, I know where we're going, and we're just going to get the help that we can and keep her as safe as we can. And we also know she's not going to have a long life. She will hopefully be with us another 4 or 5 years. I mean, I was just, you talk to doctors and they say, well, kids like Louisa, they go till about they're 21 and then their lungs poop out. That's what she told me. So I was like, great, we've got, 5 years. But at the same time, nobody can predict. You also know that. But there was never a time when I was thinking, we're going to stop treatment. Never, because plus she's in the hospital. A lot of the time she's very happy. She had a big crush on Igor, the respiratory therapist. She loved the hospital because there are people coming and going, and she loved the social scene of it. We were always, when I say fighting, we don't like the word fighting anymore, but we were always trying to get her the best care to keep her healthy as long as we could. And we also knew the reality, because we had friends whose children died in the middle of the night, once, twice, 3 times. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We'd seen all of these different things.
Mm-hmm.
And so we knew what was possible. And we would just do everything we could to keep her healthy and happy and with us.
Yeah. Would you, and it's okay to say no if you don't want to do this, but I'm curious about the end. How did she come to the end of her life? What happened? Was it at the hospital? Was it home?
I just left home 2 weeks before. I had taken her to the doctor. She was getting another lung infection. She didn't need to be hospitalized. They just put her back on Cipro or whatever those strong antibiotics are. But I had committed, it sounds crazy, but it did seem to make sense at the time. I was going to go on a 6-month tour with the show Wicked. I had done Wicked in San Francisco. They liked me enough, so they said, oh, now we'd like to offer you this tour. And I looked at the schedule, and it was all in the West. And you always had 3 days off between cities. So I knew that every few weeks I'm coming home for 3 days. Mm-hmm. And I talked to my husband, and we just figured 6 months, we'll figure this out.
Sure.
So I left in mid-ish March and went down to Costa Mesa in Southern California to start in the tour. And I was talking to Louisa that weekend with her caregiver in the house. We were on Skype. It did not look well. She was not happy. She didn't feel well. Something was going on. And my husband was talking to the hospital and the doctors. And they said, don't bring her into the hospital because a lot of kids are very sick right now, and she's too vulnerable. She'll see both of her gastroenterologist and her pulmonologist Monday morning, first thing. So that was all on Sunday. And something happened in the middle of the night. We don't know what. We don't know, did her body go into sepsis? We don't know what happened. But for some reason, it was too much. And, I got the call in a hotel room in Costa Mesa from my husband. And so, yeah, it was terrible.
Yeah.
And, and then, of course, how could I not have been there? But I wasn't there. And I was going to come home that Monday. That was the plan, because I was done with Costa Mesa Sunday night. Monday morning, I was getting in my car, and I would have been home in whatever that drive is. I don't know, 5 or 6 hours maybe. And he called me probably at 7 a.m. And it's shocking, of course.
Yeah.
I literally just held the phone, and it was like a conscious decision. I shrieked as loud as I could twice. And then I called the desk and I said, can somebody please come to the room? Something terrible has happened. And these poor young people from the desk at this nice little hotel came to my room.
Oh.
And I said, this is what's happened. And I was just, very in shock or whatever you're in, not crying, not screaming, I just needed somebody to be in the room. And then I thought, I don't know what to do. I have to get home. How does that going to happen? So I couldn't think straight. And the next thought pops into my head, call your stage manager. Stage managers are the most amazing people in theater. He came right over. He said, don't worry about anything. I will drive your car to the next place. I will get you to your flight. And he made everything happen. And I was home in probably a few hours.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's still, I think about it all, and it's hard to believe we all went through what we went through, and that, we miss Louisa all the time. And it's just, that's what it is. It's very strange on a certain level that it happened, and we lost her, and we had this great life with her. There's a lot of, I think, even if you have typical children, there's this thing at some point where you're not you don't need to mother them anymore because they're out of the house and all of that. So you have a little bit of grief around that. So yeah, it's a more complicated grief. I'm totally fine. It's like, I'm totally fine. This happened in 2011. I consider myself an elder griever. I can be there for other people. And then there are just some times when some music will come on and you'll have to either turn it off, or you'll go, you know what, I'm having a real emotion. I'm going to play this music and no one's in the house. And I can cry and scream, and then it'll be over in 3 minutes. But normally, like now, I'm just talking about Louisa, and I'm not. Yeah. That's how it is now.
Back to the metaphor of crash landing in Afghanistan. It just sounds so true in so many ways. Kind of this traumatic entry into this place with strange language and things you don't know, and you don't have any idea where you're going or what you're doing, and you live with it and start to grasp what's happening, start to grasp where you are and who's with you and what's possible. And then you start to see the beauty in the things around you, even in the midst of chaos and difficulty.
And you realize there are all these other people. There are all these other people there. I had another metaphor in my mind, which was, it's like you're in a terrifying dark forest in the beginning. You're terrified. You can't move. You can't do. And little by little, the light starts to change. Your eyes get accustomed to the dark, something like this. And you realize you're surrounded by all of these families. There are all of these people there. And they are in this family of yours. They have special kids. They have kids that went through, catastrophes or were injured or died. So there's a worldwide community of people who are there, and you can support them. They can support you. You have a bond that you connect to people you never, in your old life, you were like, oh, I won't even look at a child in a wheelchair. And now I see a family with a kid in a wheelchair, and I'm very respectful, but I've ended up having incredible conversations with people on the street just to say, can I say hello? And I don't go into my backstory. I just say I've got a lot of people in this world, and so nice to meet you. And it opens up your world in a way you never wanted to know about. But it's your heart, if you're lucky, just really opens in a very, very beautiful way.
There is something about going through this particular kind of, maybe any kind of trauma like this, that seems to turn you into an amazingly generous person. It's just all of these families.
Right. If you're lucky, your heart doesn't harden. It somehow opens to, because we are all so vulnerable in our little human lives. And we all face so much. So maybe not this, but we all are facing what we're facing. And so, it can be very, I don't even know what the word is, but there can be a very positive opening to a person.
Yeah. You're making me tear up.
That's healthy.
It's true in so many instances, though, because, any kind of difficulty that we face, we have this choice, this opportunity to either harden our hearts, close up, become defensive, or open up and become generous and kind and open to new things. It's very meaningful, very powerful.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so glad that you opened up. I'm so glad that you, that all of this has turned you into this person that you are, rather than what it could have been, which is a very, a very hard-hearted.
Yeah.
It could very easily be that for a lot of people.
We were lucky. We had so much. We had family support.
Yeah.
I have friends that went through some of the tortures of the damned in a 5-story walk-up in New York with no help,
Right.
no family.
Right.
And they went through the seizures and the shots and all of that, and they were completely alone.
Yeah.
We were living at my parents' for 9 months. They never asked us, oh, how long are you staying? Nope, we just moved in. Then about 9 months later, moved out. And, I was very lucky.
Yeah.
Very lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What would you say is the overall lesson or lessons that you carry with you from this experience?
Lesson. I don't know if I've articulated it so clearly, but there's something about the massive, overwhelming feeling of love and care, and being able to take care of this amazing, beautiful daughter. You can survive more than you think.
Mm-hmm.
You can go on. Life will go on. I think the connections with people that happened, that was very powerful. To realize we were not alone. We were very lucky. We were supported emotionally by so many people, starting from my husband, my parents, Mary Jo at New York Hospital, who set us up in that program, the therapist. It was this incredible web of support, and then on out into the doctors. But yeah, I have to remember a huge amount of, I think this word is grace. This just things that happened, and we were not alone,
Yeah.
And then I had my second daughter, and pretty lucky.
Yeah. It's a beautiful story. It's a lovely book. I'm taken with your writing. I really like the way that you write. It does it justice, I think.
Thank you.
So there's a couple things that we typically ask the people who are living with illness. So I'm gonna kind of reframe it a little bit for you, and this is kind of how we wrap up every interview. The first thing is we always ask about people's thoughts about afterlife, no afterlife. Does it matter to you? Does it not matter to you? Do you have kind of a religious or worldview thing about afterlife or thoughts?
I'm just floating around not knowing is what I can say. It's interesting. I'm finishing up this week this amazing class in the grief space, and there are a lot of grief people out there, but there's this wonderful man who's been in that world for decades. His name is David Kessler.
Okay.
And people that I knew through this world, everybody kept mentioning, oh yeah, I've done the Kessler grief educator training. I finally said, well, what is that? And it's a 3-month training. I'm finishing this week. One of our second to last class he was talking about culture, religion, and some of these ideas. And if you're working with somebody, and I'm not a therapist, and I'm not going to be a therapist, but I wanted the training because I am in, once in a while, I'm in a grief support group for parents like myself. And he said, I was so surprised because so many people are so cold to this stuff, but he's done a book and research about, what does he call it? Near-death visits, where they've studied people over and over. And he talked to medical professionals, so not just the families, because he said, if it's just talking to families, no one will believe you. But talking to medical professionals who were in the room, and the dying person is seeing, many times it's their mother, a loving family member who has passed. I just loved hearing that. I've heard this many times. So where am I? I'm very open to, of course, wanting this to be true. With Louisa, it took me a long time, maybe the first year, maybe a year went by. I had never dreamed of her. I finally had a dream of her when I was alone one night in Arizona. It was the happiest dream. She was being held by somebody in their arms. I was overjoyed to see her. It turned out it was on her birthday. It was October 2nd in the middle of the night. I had this dream. I woke up. I was so overjoyed waking up. I had no sadness that, I had a dream. And I was so full of joy and love that I had, quote, seen my daughter in this dream. I don't know what it all means. I never wake up sad if I see her in my dream.
Yeah.
I wake up overjoyed. So what are my beliefs? I don't know, but I am tired of being somewhere agnostic, half Jewish, half Episcopalian, nothing.
Right.
So I'm actually going through something right now where I can't tell you what my beliefs are, but I'm becoming Catholic.
Okay.
It's friends of mine, some say, "Oh, really?" I've had another friend who said, oh, that totally makes sense. I can't explain it, but clearly for many, many decades, there have been things that have been, it's like, why do I always want to be in a Catholic church when I'm somewhere? Why do I want to go in and light candles? Why? So many things have happened. And I finally had this moment last spring when I thought, you know what? I just want to go through this. It's a program for 9 months.
Yeah.
And it's straight from you. I go over to my little church and go to my OCIA group. And on the Easter Vigil on April 4th, which is the death day of my daughter, so it's an amazing coincidence,
Whoa.
I will be confirmed into the Catholic Church.
Okay.
And with some people, you tell them that and they'll just, not like it at all. And I understand, whatever. Sure. But I just, at this point in my life, I want to see what's there for me and to try to basically pray for some kind of faith is what I'm doing. As I say, I don't know. I really don't know. But I don't want to just stay there. I now want to learn about this.
I like that. The last question we ask everybody is, how do you want to be remembered? And so I'm going to ask you, how do you remember Louisa?
I remember Louisa with so much love and joy. And I remember Louisa at 3 a.m. when we went into the emergency room for another bad illness. And I, of course, am full of fear. And I look over at her at one point. She's on her little gurney. And I look at her and she's smiling ear to ear. And I follow her eyes. What is she? Oh, there's a handsome male nurse that is, doing something with her on the, and she's just full of joy and happiness because she's in the moment. There's this lovely young man who's taking care of her. And that little story, that little example, that's a big part of how she brought us into, like, it's going to be okay. We're going to be okay because Louisa's happy and Louisa loves life. And Louisa is not, once in a while something creepy on a movie would scare her, but mostly she was very, very, very happy and loved life. And that is how we lived with her, and that's how I will always remember her. And thank you for asking that.
Yeah. May we all be so lucky to live in the moment and not in fear
Yeah.
when things like that happen. Look for the handsome male nurse.
Look for the male nurse.
Yeah,
I know.
Goodness, what a gift. Well, Jody, thank you so much. Tell us the name of your book, and do you have a website?
My book is, as we said, it's called She May Be Lying Down, but She May Be Very Happy. It's published by Kelson Books up in the Northwest, and I have an author website, which is just my name, jodygelb.com.
We'll put a link in the show notes so people can find it. So,
great.
Yeah, thank you so much
for
Cody. Joining me. This is really great.
Really enjoyable. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've loved it.
Thank you, Jody, for sharing your story and for sharing Louisa with us. I highly recommend Jody's book, She May Be Lying Down, but She May Be Very Happy. It's a memoir, but it's written in a very poetic way that invites the reader to feel the emotions that Jody's expressing. You can find more about Jody and order her book at jodygelb.com. That's JODYGELB.com. If you'd like to see some video or extra content from this interview, you can do that at patreon.com/dyingtotellyu. You can sign up for free to see more from this interview, stay up to date with callback episodes with past guests, behind-the-scenes videos of interviews, and more. That's patreon.com/dyingtotellyu. Viktor Frankl said, "Everything can be taken from a person but one thing, the last of the human freedoms. To choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way." In the midst of all that's happening, remember, we have the opportunity to choose how we respond. May we all choose an attitude of kindness to others and to ourselves. This is Dying to Tell You.